Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. In this world, things are constantly dying. Things disappear all the time. Man has, in many ways, become immune to all of the death around him. He's become used to it, to the point where he doesn't give it much thought. There's a story of a man who dug graves, and he was now in his 60s. And he'd been digging graves since he was 18. And someone came up to him and said to him, with all of these people that you have buried, what is it that you've learned? And he said, the most amazing thing that I've seen is that after all of these years of putting people in the ground, I haven't taken stock of myself and I haven't changed at all. And it's like that for us. It all happens to somebody else. It doesn't happen to us. It all happens to another person. It doesn't happen to us. The things that seem so normative in this world that are going on constantly are all happening to other people. We are somehow encapsulated and immune. When you see a caterpillar, it needs to be understood that before a butterfly can occur, a caterpillar has to disappear. A caterpillar has to die. So there's a progression. Death brings upon new birth. If a seed is planted, if you look closely at a seed, you'll see that the seed encapsulates something else. And for whatever that something else is to come into being, the seed has to die. There is no longer a seed once that something else grows. The seed dies away. It's consumed as food for that point within the seed that is to become whatever it is that it is to become. It's like that also for man. In order for us to truly understand who it is that we are, we have to understand what it means to die before death. We have to understand what it means to disappear to this world. In the same way that a seed has a covering, and these coverings disappear before the plant rises, before the tree comes into being, man has coverings. And we need to know what these coverings are. These two coverings that encapsulate man are Maya and mind and desire. Maya is the world, illusion. Mind and desire is what functions within illusion. Man has a choice to make. Man can either spend his life reacting to his mind and desire and fulfilling his fantasies within Maya, within this illusory world, or man can give up mind and desire and Maya and have them die within him. It is this death of mind and desire and Maya within man that brings about the rebirth of man. So when we talk about dying before death, what we mean is that man dies to the world, that man dies to his mind, that man dies to illusion, that man dies to desire. In other words, he becomes inert to those things. He no longer reacts to those things. He reacts in an entirely different way. Now, this being inert to the world goes through all of the different interactions that man has in the world. Each of us is a political animal. I once wrote to Bawa about a situation that I was in, and in his response to me, he said, as soon as you have two or more people involved in anything, you have politics. And the politics means that each one of them is trying to somehow gain a foothold or gain an advantage for themselves. And that's what it's like in the world when institutions are trying to gain advantage for themselves. Now, it's understood that certain institutions try to gain advantage for themselves, but it becomes a little absurd when religions try to gain advantage for themselves. Religions are not in the business of gaining advantage for themselves. Religions should be in the business of saving souls. When a prophet came, did the prophet try to establish a religion, or did the prophet try to bring about an understanding for the people that he was with so that those people could save their souls and come to know reality? So what happens when religion takes on a political stance as opposed to a prophetic stance? What happens is the religion becomes politicized and the religion loses its validity. It loses its validity because it is no longer in the business of saving souls. It's in the business of becoming greater within itself. The differences are self-evident. In the time of the Crusades were established for political gain. At the same time, there was a saint, a Christian saint, whose name was Francis of Assisi, who was there to bring truth into the world. And while the Christians were at war with the Muslims, it is said that Francis of Assisi visited the Muslims and made peace with them and had no animosity towards them. If we truly understand who we are, we can truly understand how we need to react to things and how we should react to things. God is very patient with us. He gives us until our last breath to rectify our relationship with him, to make our relationship with him appropriate. He is patient beyond measure. He is patient beyond our understanding. What is the extent of our own patience? What is the extent of our ability to allow other people to come into true knowledge? Do we evaluate them in a snapshot in time? Do we evaluate them at a moment when they were at their worst or close to their worst, and hold that as our image of them forever? Or are we able to understand that man is a work in progress, and that things can, in fact, change over time if we allow the change to occur and we don't intervene and create animosities which will sever the relationship and stop that progress from proceeding? What is it that we do? We know what the other person feels like at that moment. We certainly can evaluate that, but how do we evaluate what we do to aid in that relationship moving forward and becoming appropriate? When the seed germinates and the seed becomes a tree, the tree then flowers, and the flowers give forth fruit. Does the tree eat the fruit? Of course not. The tree is giving to all of humanity. When God gives towards his creation, does he expect you to pay him back in kind with what he has given to you? Or is God giving freely out of his compassion and mercy and love, and is giving in abundance towards all of his creation? What is our relationship with the rest of humanity? If we truly grow in the way that the tree grows, if we have done away with the seed and the coverings in the seed that allow for that growth to come forth, if that point of truth is found, and we have somehow released ourselves from the two coverings that hold us in place within the world, from Maya and from desire and mind, we then can germinate into a new life, a new existence, a new way of being. The old self passes, it dies. The coverings that compressed the old self fall away. Mind and desire and illusion fall away, and we become dead to them. Well, once we become dead to them, we are no longer fascinated by what they have to offer. We are no longer fascinated by what mind and desire bring to us, or at least what we believe they bring to us. The satisfactions that the world give us no longer have that intensity and that power over us once we have released ourselves from mind and desire and illusion. And that's when we can become different. So when we ask a question, we always have to understand that within the question, there is a whole set of circumstances. And one of the sets of circumstances is, are we asking the question from the state of being within illusion and mind and desire, or are we asking the question from the state of being outside of illusion and dead to mind and desire? Your answer is going to be different because your inclination is going to be different. Your answer is going to be different because your intention is
You
going
in the kitchen, huh?
to be different.
Oh, you didn't throw that oatmeal away, did you?
All of these things have
Oh,
to
it
be
was
taken
empty.
into consideration. All of these things have to be understood. So the answer that we're going to get and the answer that we're going to hold on to is going to be dependent on the state that we are in. People would come to my sheikh and ask him questions, and he would sometimes answer the question, and their first reaction often was, oh, the translator must have translated that incorrectly. Let's try this again. And he would re-ask the question, and the translator would retranslate the question to Bawa, and Bawa would give the same answer. And the person would be confused and would do the same thing again. The translator must have misunderstood me. And then when the third time came, Bawa would just look at him and say, do what you want. The point being that if you're in the state that is within mind and desire, that is within the world of illusion, you want answers that will comport with mind and desire's intentions and with illusion's intentions. If you are outside of that realm, which is where the sheikh is, and the sheikh gives you an answer that's outside of that realm, that answer isn't going to make any sense to you because you don't live there. You don't live in the place where the sheikh lives. So here's the dilemma. Where is it that we live? Where is it that we want to live? Where is it that we want our intention to come from? Do we want our intention to come from the realm of mind and desire and illusion? Or do we want our intention to come from the state of God's qualities? Do we want our intention to come from truth and understanding? Where do we want to reside? Now, I have known many people who consider themselves to be on the path, but don't try to mess with their power. Don't try to mess with their authority. Don't try to question them about anything. They can't handle it. Why can't they handle it? Because they've created an illusion for their life, an illusion that says to them, I am within God's realm. And the religions do the same thing. I am within God's realm, say the religions. Yet they murder and pillage and steal and maintain that this act of war is a holy act and needs to be done for the sake of the religion and is therefore permitted, even though it would appear that these kinds of things aren't permitted at all, aren't allowed at all, aren't allowed to exist at all. How did all of this occur? How did man individually and man as a whole fall into these traps? Well, it happens because man doesn't want to look at himself and see the difficult situations that he has created for himself. Man wants to look at himself as kindly, as generous, as giving, and as following that which his God has told him to do. So man wants to see himself within a moral framework of correct action. Man wants to see himself within a moral framework of doing what's right. And in the name of doing what's right, it becomes okay to shoot a woman who doesn't have her face covered. In the name of what's right, it's okay to shoot a person who doesn't believe in the same religion that you do. In the name of what's right, enormous atrocities can be committed. Now, this happens on a national level and it happens on an individual level. Now, we, each of us, have to look at things from the individual level. We, each of us, have to look at things as to what is it that we do? How is it that we act? Why is it that we do the things that we do? Who are we? And how far can our patience go? How far can our indulgence go? Do we have a limit where after a certain amount of time we react in a violent way? Or do we understand that violence is outside the realm of what is appropriate, and as opposed to violence, we just leave? How much control do we have, or do we attempt to have, over ourselves? When is it that we begin to blame others? When is it that we begin to point fingers at others? Or can we understand the sorrow and the despair and the difficulty of others? And can we work towards aiding the despair in this world? When I was with the Sheikh, one of the things that I noticed and was self-evident if you looked was his consistency in reaction to all things. His consistency in the way he played out various situations, and his consistent being within the qualities of truth, his consistent adherence to appropriate behavior under all circumstances. He even used to tell stories about when he was younger and certain negative things were done to him that he'd react, and then messages came to him which were essentially, did I send you here as a mercy, or did I send you here as a curse? There's a story about the prophet, and this was at the time when there were wars with Medina, with Mecca, with Medina and Mecca. And one of the Arabs said to him, we should curse all of the Arabs in Mecca. And the prophet looked at him and said, I did not come into this world as a curse. I came into this world as a blessing. And it's not my place to curse people. In the future, they may become followers of the truth. And who am I to impede that occurring? So it's like us. You know, the old grandmother's adage that if you can't say something good, don't say anything at all, is incredibly positive, good advice. If more people would follow that simple grandmother's adage, there would be a lot less difficulty in the world. But we can't seem to restrain ourselves. Certain things are too dear to us, and it depends on our inclination. For some of us, our wealth, our money is dear to us. And if anybody tampers with our money, it is time for some sort of retribution. For other people, it's their power. Their power is very dear to them. And if anybody tampers with their power, it's time for retribution. For other people, it's their fame, which is very dear to them. And if anybody tampers with that, it's time for retribution. Can we get out of the retribution business? Can we leave the need for revenge? Can we break the hatred and animosities that go on for generations and come to the conclusion that the right way to interact with people is through love in every situation, in every race, in every nationality, in every religion, without separation and without differences? Can we come to that conclusion, or is that conclusion beyond our ability? Have we watched people who are continuously kind, who are continuously trying to help? Have we read the stories of the saints? Have we read the stories of the prophets? Do we understand the difficulties that all of the prophets were put through? Each one of them had a denial happen in their lifetime. Strong denials, strong retributions, and even attempts on their lives. But this didn't change their purpose. This didn't change their integrity. This didn't change God's message to them and their ability to fulfill God's message in the world. At the essence of each of us is God's qualities. And if we can do away with mind and desire and Maya, if these can die to us and in us, then God's qualities will emerge within us. And when God's qualities emerge within us, there is a rebirth. The caterpillar becomes a butterfly. The seed germinates into what it is meant to be. And each of us has to understand and believe that this can and will happen to us, and that we can and will become lovers, that we can and will become the purveyors of compassion and mercy, that we can and will become blessings to mankind, that we can and will help the rest of humanity and anybody that we run into, that we are here doing God's work. And that's when we truly become what we were meant to be in this world, which is vice regents of God, the ones who step into this world to do his work and to aid in his work, to hand out his mercy, to hand out his compassion, to hand out his love, to be examples that others can look at of what it is meant to be truly a man, what it is meant to be truly a human being. Within the world, there are so many different animals. And when man is born, he has a tendency to forget where he came from and take on the characteristics of all of these animals in the world. There are men with men's faces who are crocodiles. There are men with men's faces who are lions and bears and tigers. There is more cruelty within man than within the animal kingdom. The animal kingdom kills to survive. Man kills for the sport of killing. Man kills for real estate. Man kills for power. Man kills for possessions. Man does incredibly abusive things to satisfy his needs within this illusory world. It's only when we give up these needs that we can give up our animal qualities. It's only when we give up these needs that we can become true human beings. And true human beings are patient, patient beyond imagination. True human beings are merciful, merciful beyond imagination. True human beings are compassionate, compassionate beyond imagination. Because until you reach the point where mind and desire are dead within you, you can't imagine the truth of patience. You can't imagine the truth of compassion. You can't imagine the truth of mercy because you don't live within it. You live within a different world. So there are two different worlds here that we can live in, and we have to choose which of them we want to call our home. And to live in the world of truth, we have to die to the world of illusion. So a death has to take place for true life to come into being. And we can't be afraid of this death. And everything within us fights us to maintain this old life. It doesn't want to stop. We have this lower self within us that wants to maintain its way of being. We have this mind that doesn't want to be replaced by truth, and it fights to stay in control of us. We have to be stronger than our mind. We have to be stronger than our desire, and we have to be stronger than our attraction to illusion. And this is hard work. And this takes intention. And this takes watching oneself very, very closely to see if we stay within the guidelines that have been set by our teachers, have been set by the prophets, and have been set by God for us. The guidelines of virtue, the guidelines of truth, the guidelines of love, and the guidelines of appropriate behavior. May it become an easy path for us so that we understand what it is we are supposed to do and what it is we need to do to save ourselves in the struggle with the return to illusion and the ascendance to eternity. May eternity be the home for each of us. Ameen, ameen. Ya Rabbil Alameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.